Okay, go ahead.
Okay, hello friends. Welcome to this 44th webinar on the Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. This webinar series is available on Makara.us under the subheadings Moria Federation Webinars, then Webinar Series in Progress, as shown here. Previous episodes of this, the Secret Doctrine, and the Treatise on Cosmic Fire series are also available on YouTube. Just do a search for Francis Donald and the webinar you wish to view. You can join any of these webinars on the homepage of MoriaFederation.com. Okay. During our last session, we considered the Great Pyramid as an ancient temple of initiation. Overseen by Hermes or his spiritual descendant, and very likely involving a ritual death and rebirth as described in the myth of Isis and Osiris. Of note in MPH's text is the fact that the red granite sarcophagus in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid emits a resonant tone when struck, or when an ohm is sounded from within it. We then considered the concept of the second death, known by the ancient Egyptians, practiced in the greater mysteries of Eleusis in Greece, and even described by the master Djwhal Khul. We then took a look at the text beneath the color plate on the next page entitled The Saitic Isis, where we learned about the universal aspect of this Egyptian divine mother, described as the eldest daughter of Kronos, wife and sister of the high king Osiris, and who, quote, rises in the dog star. We then considered the meaning of the veil of Isis and ended with a dramatic poem by Friedrich von Schiller that relates the plight of a young acolyte who prematurely lifts the veil. Facing the page with the image of Isis and the text we considered during our last session is the first page of a new chapter entitled Isis, the Virgin of the World. So, without further ado, could we get a reader for this first two paragraphs, actually, of this new chapter?
I'm going to try. My internet seems to be full. It is especially fitting of Hermetic symbolism should begin with a discussion of the symbols and attributes of the Saitic Isis. This is the Isis of Sais, famous for the inscription concerning her, which appeared on the front of her temple in that city. I, Isis, am all that has been, that is or shall be. No mortal man hath ever me unveiled. Plutarch affirms that many ancient authors believed this goddess to be the daughter of Hermes. Others held the opinion that she was the child of Prometheus. Both of these demigods were noted for their divine wisdom. It is not improbable that her kinship to them is merely allegorical. Plutarch translates the name Isis to mean wisdom. Jeffrey Higgins, in his Anacalypsis, delivers the name of Isis from the Hebrew Iso and the Greek, and the Greek whatever, to save. Some authorities, however, for example, Richard Payne Knight, as stated in his Symbology of Ancient Art and Mythology, believe the word to be of northern extraction, possibly Scandinavian or Gothic. In these languages, the name is pronounced Isa, meaning ice or water, its most passive, crystallized, negative state.
Okay, I want to ask you, is the page as clear as it usually is? Because I've changed formats a little bit.
Okay, Johnny.
What?
Looks
Yeah.
clear to me.
Okay.
My internet is unstable. It's winking.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's like it normally is, right? Because I've changed the format a little bit. I want to make sure that I'm getting the same resolution that I usually do. So
Yes, it's good resolution.
it's looking good to everybody. Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Okay, so first, hang on a sec. It is especially fitting that a study of Hermetic symbolism should begin with a discussion of the symbols and attributes of the Saitic Isis. This is the Isis of Sais, famous for the inscription concerning her, which appeared on the front of her temple in that city. I, Isis, am all that has been, that is or shall be. No mortal man hath ever me unveiled. The Saitic Isis is so named because she was worshipped in the Temple of Isis at Sais in ancient Egypt. In Godfrey Higgins' Anacalypsis, we learned that, at least according to Abbe Bazin, the words I am that I am, which are the Leo keywords, were inscribed on the front of that temple. Isis is, quote, all that has been, that is or shall be, because she represents both primordial substance and the laws of nature that substand all manifestation. No mortal man hath ever me unveiled. She's able to make that statement because the mortal condition itself precludes knowing the noumenal realms that substand mortality. Next, Plutarch affirms that many ancient authors believed this goddess to be the daughter of Hermes. Others held the opinion that she was the child of Prometheus. Both of these demigods were noted for their divine wisdom. It's not improbable that her kinship to them is merely allegorical. Okay, so primordial Hermes is the mind of God from which all creation, Isis, emanates, right? We have a similar idea in Prometheus, for the fire he brings is the fire of mind, the fire of Hermes. Next, Plutarch translates the name Isis to mean wisdom. Godfrey Higgins, in his Anacalypsis, derives the name of Isis from the Hebrew Iso and the Greek to save. Also, in Anacalypsis, we learn that the S in both Sais and Isis is associated with hissing, and thus with the serpent of wisdom. And we see here Isis represented as a serpent. The S sound was also associated with the number 6, 60, 600, and 6,000, all representing cycles of manifestation over which Isis presides. Even Theosophy, 6 is the number of manifestation, and of the 6 subplanes, for instance, beneath the primordial subplane. Next, some authorities, however, for example, Richard Payne Knight, as stated in his Symbolical Language of Ancient Art and Mythology, believe the word to be of northern extraction, possibly Scandinavian or Gothic. In these languages, the name is pronounced Isa, meaning ice or water in its most passive, crystallized negative state. So let's take a closer look at this Scandinavian goddess through a quote from Symbolical Language of Ancient Art and Mythology. Could we get a reader, please?
Yvonne, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. Disa, the Isis of Northern Europe. The Disa or Isa of the North was represented by a conical figure enveloped in a net, similar to the cortina of Apollo on the metals of Kos, Chersonius in Crete, Naples in Italy, and the Syrian kings. But instead of having the serpent coiled around it, as in the first, or some symbol or figure of Apollo placed upon it as in the rest, it had terminated in a human head. This goddess is unquestionably the Isis whom the ancients, Suevi, according to Tacitus, worshipped. For the initial letter of the first name appears to be an article or prefix joined to it, and the Egyptian Isis was occasionally represented enveloped in a net, exactly as the Scandinavian goddess was at Upsal. This goddess is delineated on the sacred drums of the Laplanders, accompanied by a child, similar to the Horus of the Egyptians, who so often appears in the lap of Isis on the religious monuments of that people. The ancient Muscovites also worshipped a sacred group composed of an old woman with one male child in her lap and another standing by her, which probably represented Isis and her offspring. They had likewise another idol called the golden heifer, which seems to have been the animal symbol of the same personage, symbolic language of the ancient art and mythology.
Thank you. So,
Francis,
yeah,
hold on just 1 second. Can you go back a slide?
sure.
Okay, maybe this isn't the one. Anyway, Anne Veronica says there is a Greek Z missing in the Greek word to save. She says it is written, and she gave us the Greek, and it looks like I don't know, anyway, Zosa, to save. Anne Veronica, maybe you can clarify which, there we go, right there. The Greek, it's one of the highlighted ones. The Greek, it should be ZWZW.
Go ahead, Anne
Can I
Veronica.
talk? Okay, you have written here zo, which means animal, or if you have written a double O, it's I live. Actually, you have to put a Greek S, an omega, and then a Z.
Oh,
The
okay.
Z you have in the beginning should be between the two omegas and an S in the beginning. I've given BL the right writing, so you can take it afterwards and put the right words in.
It's in the chat if you can look at that. It's the last highlighted line that you have there on this slide.
Right. Okay. I see it. Yeah. Yeah, I see. Yeah, it's a little different there with that that missing letter. The problem is that first of all, this was taken from. You know what'd be interesting? Let me pull this up and look at the original. Where is that now? Yeah, here. So
You're
here,
right. It's written the way you have written it. But
well,
ZOO means either animal. It's not exactly a Greek word. It means I live or an animal, which has inside it, as we say, animal.
yeah.
I live animal. So it's not to save. To save is tozo. That's why I corrected you. But it's written that way, and I wonder why.
Yeah, this is the original. I was going to say that, the translation to a different font can really play havoc with especially Greek letters, but I see that he has it. Let me compare it here. He has it pretty much. Oh, well, it's not exactly the same anyway.
Well, I'll send you the chat because she has it written in Greek as well as in English. So you can look at it then
Okay.
and fix it after the fact, okay?
Yeah, great. So, okay, I think we were here. Let's see.
Yes, but the original has this, and I have to see it why the original has this.
Even back in that day, they had typos.
Yeah, you know, the original is full of mistakes of that kind. I've run across them often. Sometimes I change the text, but of course with the Greek, I wasn't able to know, so I didn't change it. But yeah, sometimes I change the text because of the typos in the original. So anyway, let's go ahead. So next up, could we get a reader, please?
Vivian, can you read that for us, please?
This excuse me. This Egyptian deity, under many names, appears as the principle of natural fecundity among nearly all the religions of the ancient world. She was known as the goddess with 10,000 appellations and was metamorphosed by Christianity into the Virgin Mary. For Isis, although she gave birth to all living things, chief among them the sun, still remained a virgin, according to the legendary accounts. Apuleius, in the 11th book of the Golden Ass, ascribes to the goddess the following statement concerning her powers and attributes. Behold, I, moved by thy prayers, am present with thee. I, who am nature, the parent of things, the queen of all the elements, the primordial progeny of ages, the supreme of divinities, the sovereign of the spirits of the dead, the first of the celestials, and the uniform resemblance of gods and goddesses. I, who rule by my nod the luminous summits of the heavens, the salubrious breezes of the sea, and the deplorable silences of the realms beneath, and whose one divinity the whole orb of the earth venerates under a manifold form, by different rites and a variety of appellations. Hence, the primogenial Phrygians call me Pesinuntica, the mother of the gods. The Attic Aborigines, Cecropian Minerva. The floating Cyprians, Paphian Venus. The arrow-bearing Cretans, Diana Dictina. The three-tongued Sicilians, Stygian Proserpine, and the Eleusinians, the ancient goddess Ceres. Some also call me Juno, others Bellona, others Hecate, and others Rhamnusia. And those who are illuminated by the incipient rays of that divinity, the sun, when he rises, viz. The Ethiopians, the Arii, and the Egyptians, skilled in ancient learning, worshipping me by ceremonies perfectly appropriate, call me by my true name, Queen Isis.
Well, kudos, Vivian. You managed to get through those names pretty well. Okay, first up, this Egyptian deity under many names appears as the principle of natural fecundity among nearly all the religions of the ancient world. She was known as the goddess with 10,000 appellations and was metamorphosed by Christianity into the Virgin Mary. For Isis, although she gave birth to all living things, chief among them the sun, still remained a virgin, according to the legendary accounts. So, even though gods and goddesses were worshipped as specific deities, it is perhaps more accurate to understand each of them as a personified nexus of divine attributes, qualities, and powers. In other cultures, divine beings with similar but not always identical qualities were given different names. Thus, aspects of Isis's role as Divine Mother were personified as Artemis, Demeter, Ceres, Aphrodite, and Hera among the Greeks, by Sarasvati, Lakshmi, Radha, Parvati, and Durga among the Hindus, and of course by the Virgin Mary in Christianity. Here's just the first page of a list of goddesses, many of them similar to or aspects of Isis, from an online dictionary that you'll find in your chat box if you're interested in going there. You may want to resend that now that more people have shown up. It would be a life study to familiarize oneself with the various qualities of the goddesses and how they compare to similar deities in other cultures. A worthwhile life study, but nonetheless a life study. That said, there are certain qualities that mother goddesses tend to share. Chief among them, they are the source of all material existence, especially those cultures that have a more esoteric understanding. But they all share the idea of fecundity, motherhood, and the ability to nurture. The seemingly contradictory name Virgin Mother, which is a common but not universal attribute of these goddesses, points to the occult idea that the Divine Mother, while being the source of manifestation, nonetheless remains pure and unchanged by the act of initiating this manifestation. Theosophically speaking, she is Mula Prakriti, that shining, undifferentiated substance that is drawn from, but not changed by, that which manifests. Any thoughts or questions? Anytime you have any questions all throughout, just let me know. Okay, next. Apuleius in the 11th book of the Golden Ass ascribes to the goddess the following statement concerning her powers and attributes. Apuleius was a Roman author, philosopher, and an initiate of the mysteries who is referred to many times in HPB's work. The actual name of the Golden Ass was the Metamorphosis of Apuleius. Notice Isis at the left center of the illustration. Okay, let's listen to Isis's words to Apuleius in a vision. Behold, I, moved by thy prayers, am present with thee. I, who am nature, the parent of things, the queen of all the elements, the primordial progeny of ages, the supreme of divinities, the sovereign of the spirits of the dead, the first of the celestials, and the uniform resemblance of gods and goddesses. Quite a list. Each of these descriptors elevates Isis to the plane of primordial matter. For example, I, who am nature, the parent of things. And the title Queen of all the elements elevates Isis into a position numinal to all diversification. Once you get this recognition of this numinal position that she personifies, then what she says about herself makes much more sense. The primordial progeny of ages, literally firstborn, or first reflection from pure spirit, becomes for Isis the source of all progeny or generation. The supreme divinities and the first of the celestials means Queen of Heaven, like the Greek Hera. As wife of Osiris, ruler of the underworld, she is the, quote, sovereign of the spirits of the dead. as well as chief mourner. Even Hades or Pluto was under her rule. Theosophically speaking, the spirits of the dead still participate in cyclic rebirth and are thus under the purview of the Queen of all manifestation. Finally, the uniform resemblance of gods and goddesses. I like this especially because it deals with appearances, right? Again, suggests the prototype, almost like the Manu for root races, right? The prototype for all existences, including gods and goddesses. That's why she was drawn from to create so many subsidiary goddesses that would exemplify and emphasize some particular aspect or quality. Next, I, who rule by my nod the luminous summits of the heavens, the salubrious breezes of the sea, and the deplorable silences of the realms beneath, and whose one divinity the whole orb of the earth venerates under a manifold form by different rites and a variety of appellations. In short, Isis is queen of not only all gods, goddesses, and human beings, but of the entire natural world. Next, we have additions to the list of names earlier given. Quote, hence the primogenial Phrygians called me Pessinuntica, the mother of the gods, the Attic Aborigines, Cecropian Minerva, the floating Cyprians, Paphian Venus, the arrow-bearing Cretans, Diana Dictina, the three-tongued Sicilians, Stygian Proserpine, and the Eleusinians, the ancient goddess Ceres. And then most importantly, some also called me Juno, others Bellona, others Hecate, and others Rhamnusia. So here are three of the goddesses mentioned in the list. They have dozens of specific attributes, many of them shared by Isis. But I think it's safe to say that Isis is probably the most primordial of all the ancient goddesses, because in many ways the Greek method of understanding deity was the most advanced or the most esoteric. Finally, and those who are illumined by the incipient rays of that divinity, the sun, when he rises, viz. The Ethiopians, the Arii, and the Egyptians skilled in ancient learning, worshiping me by ceremonious, perfectly appropriate, call me by my true name, Queen Isis. Theosophically being the mother aspect of all natural phenomena, Isis is also the mother of the physical sun. This is an interesting passage because she suggests here that through the perfecting of awareness and thereby perfecting the ceremonies, one is able to unveil further aspects of this great being, and then are able to know her by her true name, right? Okay, let's take a look at the illustration in the center of the page, reproduced from Mosaïs Histoire der Hebreeuws Kerk. I have no idea how to actually pronounce that. Could we get a reader, please, for this section? Biel, are you there?
Sorry, I was talking. Trudy, can you read that for us, please?
Can you hear me?
You're
you
pretty light.
Pardon?
Can you turn up at all? Or just move closer to your computer.
Got headphones on. Isis, Queen of Heaven. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Diodorus writes of a famous inscription carved on a column of Nysa in Arabia, wherein Isis described herself as follows: I am Isis, queen of the country. I was instructed by Mercury. No one can destroy the laws which I have established. I am the eldest daughter of Saturn, most ancient of the gods. I am the wife and sister of Osiris, the king. I first made known to mortals the use of wheat. I am the mother of Horus, the king. In my honor was the city of Bubaste built. Rejoice, O Egypt, rejoice, land that gave me birth. See Morals and Dogmas by Albert Pike.
Thank you. Okay, so Diodorus Siculus, we've taken a look at this work in other webinars, other subjects, was a 1st century BC Greek historian known for his monumental Bibliotheca Historica in 40 books, 15 of which survive intact. Nyasa, the city where Diodorus found the inscription on a carved column, is actually an ancient city in Turkey near Ephesus. It was, even though it was in Turkey, it was under Greek rule in the ancient world. Isis proclaims that she was the eldest daughter of Saturn, meaning of time itself, and thus is, as earlier proclaimed, the primordial progeny of ages. That is to say, the firstborn of Saturn. The fact that she was taught by Mercury suggests intelligent substance, because remember, she's the Mula Prakriti, or substantive aspect, but taught, quote unquote, by Mercury suggests the intelligent nature of that substance. And development of the mental body and the highest sheath of the form aspect. No one can destroy the laws which I have established, because they are the laws of nature itself. There is no one outside those laws to destroy them, because it's all encompassing. The reference to wheat is interesting, since in theosophical tradition, wheat is a gift from Venus, whose namesake in mythology is associated with Isis. Wheat was revered in ancient Egypt. Horus is another name for Horus, the king, and the Egyptian solar god. Bubastis, built in honor of Isis, was a city in Egypt north of Cairo and home to the famous Temple of Bast, who was a sacred cat. Okay.
Francis.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, before we move off, Magda typed in to everybody that virginity equals purity, unchangeable substance in manifestation after purification, and that's from Heracles' Labors. And then, of course, in esoteric astrology, for the sign of Virgo, DK talks about the synthesis of the 3 feminine aspects, Eve, Isis, and Mary. She is the Virgin Mother, providing that which is needed for the mental, the emotional, and the physical expression of the hidden, but ever-present divinity. I just thought I'd bring that out.
Yeah. Good stuff. Thank you. So, yeah, you can regain this purity through walking the path. She represents, Queen Isis represents that primordial state of pure light substance from which all manifestation is drawn. So, the virgin aspect relates to the fact that that is never lost, because she remains on that high plane of purified substance, right? And anything that is manifests from that, but in diversity beneath it. Okay. All right, let's get back to the main text. Could we get a reader, please?
Scott, can you read? Scott? Oh,
Yes.
there you go. There you go.
Le Plodion,
Onchion.
thank you for the French, believes that the Egyptian myth of Isis had a historical basis among the Mayas of Central America, where this goddess was known as Queen Mu. In Prince Ko, the same author finds a correspondence to Osiris, the brother husband of Isis. Le Plaion, I don't know.
Onchion.
Plongeon, just the way it looks.
Yeah.
The Plongeon theory is that Mayan civilization was far more ancient than that of Egypt. After the death of Prince Ko, his widow, Queen Mu, fleeing to escape the wrath of his murderers, sought refuge among the Mayan colonies in Egypt, where she was accepted as their queen and was given the name of Isis. While Le Plongeon may be right, the possible historical queen sinks into insignificance when compared with the allegorical, symbolic world virgin. And the fact that she appears among so many different races and peoples discredits the theory that she was a historical individual. According to Sextus Empiricus, the Trojan War was fought over a statue of the moon goddess. For this lunar Helena, and not for a woman, the Greeks and Trojans struggled at the gates of Troy.
Thank you, Scott. So as to the first part, hang on a second. Augustus Le Plongeon, maybe, I'm just guessing, often cited by HPB and Ignatius Donnelly. Remember him? He was the 19th century Atlantean expert. He wrote the book on Atlantis that we have quoted from when we were in that section. Anyway, so Le Plongeon was also a 19th century, but British American archaeologist and photographer who studied and extensively cataloged the Precambrian ruins of America. His catalog was used for decades after he spent time down there. However, his theories about Queen Mu and Prince Ko, who are part of a history that he and his wife constructed from studying the murals in the Yucatan, are considered fanciful by modern archaeologists and largely discounted. But who's to say that this couple didn't intuit an ancient truth that can't be verified through modern archaeological methods? Next, while Le Plongeon may be right, the possible historical queen sinks into insignificance when compared with the allegorical symbolic world virgin, and the fact that she appeared among so many different races and peoples discredits the theory that she was a historical individual. Quite so. Queen Mu may have had a vision of Isis, as Hermes did of Pymander, but it goes without saying that no incarnate human could actually be Isis. Next, according to Sextus Empiricus, the Trojan War was fought over a statue of the moon goddess. For this lunar Helena, and not for a woman, the Greeks and Trojans struggled at the gate of Troy. Of course, this hasn't been verified. But it makes sense that nation states would be much more likely to fight for possession of that state's symbol of a spiritual ideal in the form of a statue of a moon goddess, for instance, than over a person, no matter how beautiful that person may have been. Next up, can we get a reader, please?
Joe, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. Several authors have attempted to prove that Isis, Osiris, Typhon, Nephthys, and Aruris, Thoth, or Mercury, were grandchildren of the great Jewish patriarch Noah by his son Ham. But as the story of Noah and his ark is a cosmic allegory concerning the repopulation of planets at the beginning of each world period, this only makes it less likely that they were historical personages. According to Robert Flood, the sun has three properties: life, light, and heat. These three vivify and vitalize the three worlds: spiritual, intellectual, and material. Therefore, it is said, from one light, three lights. That is, the first three master masons. In all probability, Osiris represents the third or material aspect of solar activity, which by its beneficent influences vitalizes and enlivens the flora and fauna of the earth. Osiris is not the sun, but the sun is symbolic of the vital principle of nature, which the ancients knew as Osiris. His symbol, therefore, was an opened eye in honor of the great eye of the universe, the sun. Opposed to the active, radiant principle of impregnating fire, heat, and motion was the passive, receptive principle of nature.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, first, several authors have attempted to prove that Isis, Osiris, Typhon, Nephthys, and Aruris, Thoth or Mercury, were grandchildren of the great Jewish patriarch Noah by his son Ham. Well, so much for several authors. As MPH states in the last paragraph, the idea that deities representing universal principles incarnate into dense physical forms is completely non-philosophical. Theosophically, these gods and goddesses are personified principles. And even if they are also great beings, they would probably belong to the sixth kingdom in nature, and thus would certainly not incarnate into the fourth, though they may be overshadowed by, or they may overshadow someone who does, such as Pymander overshadowed Hermes and the Christ overshadowed Jesus. Next, but it's the story of Noah and his ark as a cosmic allegory concerning the repopulation of planets at the beginning of each world period. This only makes it less likely that they were historical personages. Exactly. Now, if one interprets Noah's deluge as the end of a root race, one could interpret the reestablishment of the pantheon of deities as following that deluge. Next, according to Robert Flood, the sun has three properties: life, light, and heat. These three vivify and vitalize the three worlds: spiritual, intellectual, and material. Therefore, it is said, from one light, three lights. That is, the first three master masons. It's easy to translate this into the three theosophical principles: monadic life, the light of the soul, and the heat of the rotary motion found on the three planes of human endeavor. Can we get a reader for this passage on the three master masons, on the first three master masons?
Kirsten, can you read that for us, please?
The three masters, Adoniram, Joabot, and Stolkin, are types of the true Mason who seeks for knowledge from pure motives, and that he may be the better enabled to serve and benefit his fellow man. The three grand masters correspond to the mind, the heart, and the hand. Each of these parts of man's constitution is one of the builders of his life. The mind in the story of the caravan was the master of the caravan. The hand, representing the active principle, was the master of the march, and the heart was the master of rest and repose.
Thank you. Any questions about this? Okay. Next up, in all probability, Osiris represents the third or material aspect of solar activity, which by its beneficent influences vitalizes and enlivens the flora and fauna of the earth. Osiris is not the sun, but the sun is symbolic of the vital principle of nature, which the ancients knew as Osiris. Thus, Osiris represents the energy of the manifested sun, the Vahan or vehicle of the central spiritual sun, the Amen-Ra or hidden sun in ancient Egypt. But as the sun's manifest energy, Osiris can also be seen as representative of the element of water, water being the symbol of the 7 levels of the cosmic physical plane.
Francis?
Yeah.
Sorry. Magda has a comment and a question here.
Good.
She says, as high as below, or as inner as outer, as other, Kala Chakra Mandala from D. Riegel from the conferences, or is his name Riegel?
David Riegel.
She says, so why the Ark of Alliance can't be seen by Noah and the prophets?
Yeah, it can indeed. It's the Vahan in a time of transition when the new form aspect has not yet set, and that can be between two chains in a scheme, which would amount to an untold number of years, really beyond time, that pralaya between, right? Often the gods of Brahma are seen in this same Vahan, right? It's literally in a boat floating on the primordial seas, and those seas represent a stage of non-manifestation, right? And I think that's the esoteric idea behind Noah, is that, and then more historically, we can also see it as those groups who followed the White Brotherhood that went out from Atlantis to all corners of the earth, particularly the Yucatan, into England, and to become the Druids, and then especially around the Mediterranean and Egypt, and then re-established the mysteries. And that, they also, since they travel by boat, would be like Noah's Ark. So you can see it on all those different levels. And anyone else? Or did you have something additional you were going to read or something?
No, that was
it. Okay, so can we get a reader for?
that was all I saw in the chats.
Okay, thank you. Could we get a reader, please?
Barbara, can you read that for us?
Sure. The Egyptians were, gotta put my glasses on. After the
Okay, good.
Phoenicians.
Hold on just one second before you start reading. Magda says, so it does get seen. It's the technical answer. Thank you. When researchers say it doesn't actually happen, or why do researchers say it doesn't actually happen?
Well, researchers, quote unquote, it's just like Le Plongeon, who intuited, the existence of Queen Mu and Prince Cole. Researchers are never going to come up with that kind of intuited information. It has to be in the physical record. And so since, even though there was a big boat found on top of a mountain in Armenia, I think, which some, associate with with some ark of some kind, the truth is, just by the very nature of the way that biblical passage is described, shows that it couldn't possibly have been an actual physical event, right? So then it, as often happens in the Bible, it hints at more esoteric interpretations. Theosophy actually gives you some of those interpretations, but researchers never make that leap, because they require archaeological evidence or written records or something, Okay, reader, please.
The
Okay,
Egyptians.
Barbara, you're up.
Thank you. The Egyptians were, after the Phrygians, the most ancient of mankind and the first establishers of mysteries. The Ophites explain as follows the esoteric doctrine concerning Isis and the genital member of Osiris, lost, sought after, and enveloped by her 7 times in a black or dark blue vestment. Osiris is the element water. Nature 7 times enveloped in an ethereal robe, that is, the 7 planetary spheres, stands for generation and change or creation, transformed by the ineffable, formless, imageless, incomprehensible deity. The same is implied in the words of Scripture. The righteous man shall fall 7 times and shall rise again. End quote. His all signifying the revolutions of the planets put in motion by the all-mover.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I like this quote. This is very esoteric understanding, right? So being the third aspect of the sun is going to very specifically relate to the 7 skins or planes of the cosmic physical plane, right? And therefore, from a certain perspective, can be seen as water, because all material manifestation is seen in that fundamental duality of fire and water, or air and water, as the material aspect, right? And it's true that in the myth has a lot to do with water. He floats on the Nile in that coffin, right? Which just means that the spirit of the deity is encased in the form aspect, right? A lot of the Egyptians, you can just see it, even in this, the way he's wrapped. It's like there is a being inside this wrap, right? You see what I mean? He's like wrapped. His feet, his legs aren't separated. He's encased in the form aspect, right? And that was something the Egyptians understood. Okay, next, his symbol, therefore, was an opened eye, in honor of the great eye of the universe, the sun. The opened eye also refers to an active ajna center. Could we get a reader for this, please? It's from the Secret Doctrine. This is, I have the 8 is the verse number and this is, I didn't put this here. This is the first stanza, the stanza that's on verse 8. So could we get a reader, please?
Mary, Mary, can you read for us, please?
Is she unmuted?
Yes. Alone, the one form of existence, stretched, boundless, infinite, causeless, in dreamless sleep, and life pulsated unconscious in universal space, throughout that all presence which is sensed by the opened eye of the Dhamma. Dhamma means a purified soul, one who has become a Jinvan Mukta, the highest adept, or rather, a Mahatma so-called. His opened eyes is the inner spiritual eye of the seer, and the faculty which manifests through it is not clairvoyance as ordinarily understood. Example, the power of seeing at a distance, but rather the faculty of spiritual intuition, through which direct and certain knowledge is obtainable. This faculty is intimately connected with the third eye.
Thank you. Okay, next. Actually, finally, opposed to the active radiant principle of impregnating fire, heat, and motion was the passive receptive principle of nature. In ancient Egypt, this radiant passive duality was represented by the Osiris-Isis pair, who were said to incarnate together for the benefit of mankind. Okay, next up, can we get a reader?
Tia, can you read this?
Modern science has proved that forms ranging in magnitude from solar systems to atoms are composed of positive, radiant nuclei surrounded by negative bodies that exist upon the emanations of the central life. From this allegory, we have the story of Solomon and his wives. For Solomon is a sun, and his wives and concubines are the planets, moons, asteroids, and other receptive bodies within his house, the solar mansion. Isis, represented in the Song of Solomon by the dark maid of Jerusalem, is symbolic of receptive nature, the watery maternal principle which creates all things out of herself after impregnation has been achieved by the virility of the sun. In the ancient world, the year had 360 days. The 5 extra days were gathered together by the god of cosmic intelligence to serve as the birthdays of the 5 gods and goddesses, who are called the sons and daughters of Ham. Upon the first of these special days, Osiris was born, and upon the 4th of them, Isis. The number 4 shows the relation that this goddess bears to the earth and its elements. Typhon, the Egyptian demon or spirit of the adversary, was born upon the 3rd day. The Typhon is often symbolized by a crocodile. Sometimes his body is a combination of crocodile and hog. Isis stands for knowledge and wisdom, and according to Plutarch, the word Typhon means insolence and pride. Egotism, self-centeredness, and pride are the deadly enemies of understanding and truth. This part of the allegory is revealed.
Thank you, Tia. First, modern science has proved that forms ranging in magnitude from solar systems to atoms are composed of positive, radiant nuclei surrounded by negative bodies that exist upon the emanations of the central life. So here's a material atom. Its positive protons and negative electrons serve as a kind of physical model for the universal truth that matter exists through a dual expression. Here's Babbitt's atom, which illustrates the universal archetype for the energy system of a unit of consciousness. We see the positive end at the bottom and the negative receptive end at the top. Could we get a reader for this from Layden, TCF? BL?
Uh,
Oh, there we go. Are you there?
Yes, I'm sorry, my internet body. Did you need a reader for this?
Yeah, did you wink out?
Yes, I did.
Okay, that's all right.
Oh, let me see. I'm going to ask Anne Veronica to read it, but there's some comments here from Magda again. She says metaphysical phenomena can be seen only through the third eye, is not clairvoyance, the common sense.
Yeah, that's, the third eye.
I'm sorry, did you get that?
I got enough of it, I think. She says, was she relating clairvoyance to the third eye, the ability to be clairvoyant to the third eye?
Yeah, I think that's what. Yeah. Magda, can you clarify? Can you unmute yourself and clarify?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi.
Okay. Yes, I mean, there is a difference between clairvoyance eye as commonly intended and actual metaphysical ability to see what we call auras and, what's all in the paintings of Nicola Roerich or Rudolf Steiner and all that. That's a third eye seeing or viewing and not a simple clairvoyance eyes. And that also answered to my previous questions that I was posing to you, as wise researchers or study that we mentioned do not accept or do not say clearly it is possible, but certainly not to clairvoyance or profane eyes, so to say. So I think that's my answer that I got to right now. And that's in line with what anthroposophy and Steiner and Roerich and all that current, which here in Europe is, I guess, bigger than there in the US or in other British, so to say, countries. So that kind of, as I'm understanding from these Zoom reunions, which that I'm participating to, you are much bigger on theosophy and all that, of course, being more in the British American countries. Here, Italy, Austria, and Europe in general, we're more just this as a premise as why I kind of feel like I come from a slightly different accent, on anthroposophy and theosophy. That's just my premise, as I thought I should give you. So I don't know if I clarified what I wrote in the chat as far as a third eye versus clairvoyance eye. I hope so. You can help me to clarify it better to myself.
Okay, I'm reading your chat now. Metaphysical phenomena can be seen only through third eye, is not clairvoyance eye in the common sense. Well, the Ajna Center, which is what the third eye is an etheric chakra that is between the two eyes, and it allows one to see beyond the dense and etheric physical into higher realms. Straight clairvoyance is an astral phenomena, and therefore, when there's a parallel to the astral Ajna Center, one is able to open onto the vistas of the astral realm, where so much phenomena is recorded, because that's the first level and the only level that most people who see clairvoyantly are able to perceive. But there's a higher form of clairvoyance, which is mental clairvoyance, also called just simply higher clairvoyance, which allows a paralleling of the opening of the Ajna Center on the mental sheath, and allows that transmission to the etheric sheath. And you also have to be consciously able to register that. And at that level, you're seeing into soul realms on the higher mental. And that's where you could say you're penetrating the more spiritual veil rather than a merely astral veil. And of course, the veils continue after that. One who can see Buddhic reality and higher. You could say that the organ of transmission is always through sight, because sight and synthetic understanding are very connected. The sight is also connected to manas, or the monastic principle. And so that has to be a very highly tuned entity of reception, or organ of reception, in order to receive yet higher impressions. So that's my understanding. So you always have to determine, when you're reading about phenomena and that other people are writing about, you have to determine, usually by its quality, its vibration, just where it came from, or is it just imagination? Which is another thing that's often misrepresented, is real clairvoyance, right? So you have to be very, very discriminative about your source for these phenomena. Okay. All right. Let's see.
And Veronica was going to read.
Great. And Veronica.
And Veronica, are you going to read for us? You're muted.
Is she unmuting?
I don't see that she is there. No. Yvonne, why don't you go ahead and read that for us?
Okay. This solar sphere is closely similar to the atom pictured in the book by Babbitt and later in Occult Chemistry by Mrs. Besant. The sun is heart-shaped and, seen from cosmic angles, has a depression at what might be called its North Pole. This is formed by the impact of logoic energy upon solar substance.
Okay, yeah, this is an extraordinary thing. I actually took this into a 3D program and reproduced it and tried to create it in 3D so that you could actually rotate it and look at it in all angles. I was only partially successful because you don't have a top or side view, so you have to extrapolate everything from this view. But when you get into the details of this, you find that it's like a whole world. A whole world of system behind each of these little spirals, for instance, which is the are called spiralae. Here they're just called spirals. You have, around each of those, you have another series of spirals, which of course can't be illustrated. And then around those, another series. And, you have fourth, fifth, sixth, and even seventh spiralae. And the fifth spiralae becomes active, for instance, when soul consciousness is achieved, right? So this is a profound illustration that originally appeared in Babbitt's book, but is in TCF, which is a kind of affirmation of the truthfulness of this illustration. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Next up, from this allegory, we have the story of Solomon and his wives. Because remember, we're talking about the two elements of an atom, right? The rotating negative electron type elements, and then that central core. And so now we move into this sort of allegorical aspect of this atom. So from this allegory, we have the story of Solomon and his wives. For Solomon is the sun, and his wives and concubines are the planets, moons, asteroids, and other receptive bodies within his house, the solar mansion. So here's a painting of Solomon and his wives. You can see there's a kind of a quality of them dancing around him. and very rhythmic. And other examples of this subjective polarity are, of course, Christ and his disciples, Sanat Kumara and the planetary hierarchy arrayed around him. He truly is the central point. And really any ashram with the master at the center and the lesser initiates and students at various levels of proximity in that ashram. Next up, Isis, represented in the Song of Solomon by the dark maid of Jerusalem, is symbolic of receptive nature, the watery, maternal principle, which creates all things out of herself after impregnation has been achieved by the virility of the sun. Recent research has determined that the Song of Solomon is an almost perfect translation of an Egyptian wedding rite dedicated to Isis. According to authors Lynn Picknett and Clive Prince, quote, lines that are identical and parallel to chosen ones in the Song of Songs are found in the liturgical poem from the cult of the Egyptian goddess Isis. Next, the fecund natural world aspect of Isis is only her outer garment, for as stated before, she is essentially Mula Prakriti, the shining source of the substantive realm, truly the divine mother. Okay, next up, in the ancient world, the year had 360 days. The 5 extra days were gathered together by the god of cosmic intelligence to serve as the birthdays of the 5 gods and goddesses who are called the sons and daughters of Ham. 5 days were added to the year because it was recognized that the birth of deity did not take place within the bounds of time, thus not in any year nor in any month. In her occult novel Herbach, Isha Schwaller de Lubitsch tells us the natures of the 5 intracalendary days are Osiris, Isis, Seth, Nephthys, and Horus. These 5 natures are those who are neither in heaven nor on earth, and upon whom the sun does not shine, because they're, of course, more primordial than the physical sun. As we'll learn from the natural Genesis, the use of a 360-day year was not chosen through ignorance of the actual yearly solar cycle. They knew exactly how long it took the sun to rotate, the earth to rotate around the sun. But they used this system. One reason being that those exact figures were considered hidden occult secrets at that time. Okay, can we get a reader for this, please?
Vivian, can you read that, please?
The time reckonings then culminated in the great year of 25,868 years, or in round numbers of 26,000 years, containing 52 weeks of 500 years, with 7 days of 71 to 72 years in each. The basis being a sacred year of 360 days in Egypt, which was never to be altered. For, as related by the scholiast on the Aratea of Caesar Germanicus, evidently quoting, says Bunsen, from the Hermian, the priests of Isis were accustomed to conduct the pharaoh into the Holy of Holies of her temple and bid him swear that he would not alter the year of 360 days and the 5 epagomenei, festival days. The great year, measured by the 360 degrees set in heaven, actually dominated the reckoning by the year of 360 days and necessitated its being kept after the precise length of the solar year was known. The year of 360 days was the nearest factor in the reckoning of 26,000 years to the cycle of precession.
Thank you, Vivian. It must be noted that the Mayans also had a 360-day calendar year with 5 intercalendary feast days added at the end of the year. MPH gives us more insight into the connection between 360 and 365. Could we get a reader, please?
Scott, can you read that for us, please?
The name of the Gnostic deity Abraxas, for example, which is a Greek word, when it is transformed into a mathematical sum by the substitution of the numerical value of each of its letters, totals 365, which corresponds to the days of the year. This would be appropriate since Abraxas, a solar divinity, presides over the 365 eons, or spirits of the days. In calculating the year, however, the Egyptians, including the Gnostics, set aside 5 days as the birthdays of the gods. These were not counted in the normal calendar. Thus, the year was symbolically made to conform with the 360 degrees of a circle. To the Pythagoreans, all of these mathematical factors were keys to the divine mysteries revealed through the sequences of the calendar, which was itself a simple convenience to the profane, but a mathematical marvel to the enlightened.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, it continues to astound that even though there's plentiful records as to the facts that have been described here, for instance, that that both the Mayans and the Egyptian cultures knew about the 365, that, modern archaeologists, because they're so oriented towards cultures being progressive, evolutionally progressive, can't ascribe this knowingness to these ancient cultures. They just are unable to do it, even in the face of, all the evidence. So that's one very practical reason to have a metaphysical materials available. Any questions about this? All right. Next up, upon the first of these special days, Osiris was born, and upon the fourth of them, Isis. The number 4 shows the relation that this goddess bears to the earth and its elements. Typhon, the Egyptian demon or spirit of the adversary, was born upon the 3rd day. The other 2 deities celebrated at the Apagomene, the Egyptian name for these 5 intercalendary days, were Horus and Nephthys. The latter, who was the twin sister of Isis, being associated with the journey of the funerary bark in Tripolia. Horus was born on the 2nd day of the Apagomene, I'm not sure which, and Nephthys on the 5th day. This final day was originally deemed the most important, heralding in the New Year's festival, but the emphasis later shifted to the 4th night, owing to the greater importance of Isis and her long-standing connection with the star Sirius. Yo, Scott, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was wondering, rooting around in this 360 and 365, do you recall coming across calendars that that we're aware of and did something with leap years?
No, I never did. But now that you're thinking of it, that you're mentioning it, No, I can't recall it. I have a vague memory of having read something about the recognition of the necessity for an additional day much earlier on that it is normally, ascribed to, but I can't pull it up.
Yeah, I can't either, but I have a vague memory there was something that this was known.
Yeah, it was known because they were able to stay pretty close
Yeah.
for centuries, and again, given the fact that this would have been considered secret information, it would never have been found in the written record.
Unless there's some obscure reference to the sixth god or something special.
Yeah, the one that rears its head only every 100 years. Huh?
Yeah, or in this case, every 4.
Oh, well, for that, right. Then there's a further leap day at every 100 years, but yeah, every 4. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember in my reading, especially the one that takes us on the most is Natural Genesis. He gets into this, and I don't believe he references that idea so much.
I wonder if Thomas Taylor had something to say about it.
Yeah, it would be interesting to look.
Or,
yeah.
B.F. Skinner's book.
Or Skinner, yeah. That would be a really good place to look. The canon or in Skinner's books. Yeah. Okay. Okay, next up. Let's see, wait a minute. I did this. Okay, yeah, I read this. Okay, so next. Typhon is often symbolized by a crocodile. Sometimes his body is a combination of crocodile and hog. Isis stands for knowledge and wisdom, and according to Plutarch, the word Typhon means insolence and pride. Egotism, self-centeredness, and pride are the deadly enemies of understanding and truth. This part of the allegory is revealed. So this passage from the Secret Doctrine gives us an alternative, more esoteric perspective on Typhon. Can we get a reader, please?
Yeah, can you read that for us, please?
The first and mind-born sons of the deity refuse to create progeny and are cursed by Brahma to be born as men. They are hurled down to earth, which later on is transformed, theological dogma, into the infernal regions. Ahriman destroys the bull created by Ormazd, which is the emblem of terrestrial elusive life, the germ of sorrow, and forgetting that the perishing finite seed must die, in order that the plant of immortality, the plant of spiritual eternal life, should sprout and live. Ahriman is proclaimed the enemy, the opposing power, the devil. Typhon cuts Osiris into 14 pieces in order to prevent his peopling the earth and thus creating misery. And Typhon becomes, in the esoteric theological teaching, the power of darkness. But all this is the exoteric shell. It is the worshipers of the latter who attribute to disobedience and rebellion the effort and self-sacrifice of those who would help men to their original status of divinity through self-conscious efforts. And it is these worshipers of form who have made demons of the angels of light.
Okay, do you understand this perspective? It's really important. Initially, all these dark gods, such as Typhon and Ahriman, were really the holiest of the holies. They're very much like the angels that refuse to create. right? And were thus, quote unquote, cast out from heaven, right? Because they saw creation for what it was, which is a lesser state of consciousness, right? And therefore, they fought against all efforts to take humanity further into the to the realm of the manifest world, right? And so, she says here, it is the worshipers of the latter who attribute to disobedience and rebellion and the effort and self-sacrifice of those who would help men to their original status of divinity through self-conscious efforts, right? In other words, to resist this downward peopling of the world of manifestation, right? Of course, the argument against this perspective is just that it's a necessary part of the entire process, right? That that the involutional arc is part of the entire arc and must be undergone in order to redeem the lesser lives and bring those lesser hierarchies into the light. But it's a much more it's a much more complex concept philosophically than just, the evil and the good gods, right? Okay. Next up, can we get a reader, please?
Joe, can you read that for us, please?
After Osiris, here symbolized as the sun, had become king of Egypt and had given to his people the full advantage of his intellectual light, he continued his path through the heavens, visiting the peoples of other nations and converting all with whom he came in contact. Plutarch further asserts that the Greeks recognized in Osiris the same person whom they revered under the names of Dionysus and Bacchus. While he was away from his country, his brother Typhon, the evil one, like the Loki of Scandinavia, plotted against the sun god to destroy him. Gathering 72 persons as fellow conspirators, he attained his nefarious end in a most subtle manner. He had a wonderful ornamented box made just the size of the body of Osiris. This he brought into a banquet hall where the gods and goddesses were feasting together. All admired the beautiful chest, and Typhon promised to give it to the one whose body fitted it most perfectly. One after another lay down in the box, but in disappointment rose again, until at last Osiris also tried. The moment he was in the chest, Typhon and his accomplices nailed the cover down and sealed the cracks with molten lead. They then cast the box into the Nile, down which it floated to the sea. Plutarch states that the date upon which this occurred was the 17th day of the month Athir, when the sun was in the constellation of Scorpio. This is most significant, for the scorpion is the symbol of treachery. The time when Osiris enters the chest was also the same season that Noah entered the ark to escape from the deluge.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, so
You have a hand up.
Yeah. Tia?
Go ahead, Tia.
I was just going to say, I always go to the previous slide. I was going to say that that whole excerpt to me is just further support for what the Moria Federation does, what you're doing here, and the importance of the reestablishment of the mysteries, because this is all about initiation. And what most people would focus on from an exoteric point of view would be the disobedience and the sin of disobedience. not having access to the knowledge of the whole notion of mind-born sons and discrimination and intuition and how that works in the evolutionary process. So I find that actually, thank you for that, because it's quite compelling to do my homework.
Yeah. Well, HPB is terrific around this. Nobody is willing to name their monthly magazine Lucifer, unless they have a pretty thick skin and a lot of first ray as well. And this is along that same line of, redeeming those gods from ancient times who really had other purposes than are recognized by mythology, or later mythology anyway. Thank you, Tia. I saw another hand.
Yes, Joe, go ahead.
17 days of Scorpio.
Yeah, what is that? What do you think that is? 17th
my
day of
birthday.
the month of Athir, huh?
It's my birthday.
Well, that's great. Hopefully we'll remember that in September in November, right? On November 17th. That's your birthday? Is that right?
17th degree.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it would actually start the end of
Oh, right. It wouldn't be the 17th of the month. It'd be the 17th.
October.
It'd start in October and you'd go like 9 days, and then so it'd be something like the 8th or 9th, wouldn't it? Anyway. Yeah, the Egyptians revered this number 17, very particularly, seeing in it the relationship between the highest and lowest, between spirit and matter, with the 1 and the 7. Okay, let's see. So, I saw something for the first time here too. This reference to the 72. Where does it say that?
Bottom left.
Oh,
Gathering 72 persons.
Yeah, so if we go back up here, we also find this number, right? We're talking about so yeah, 7 days of 71 or 72 years in each. I wondered if these aren't, that the secret meaning behind this myth doesn't have something to do with these time elements here. Could just be a coincidence, but it seems a real possible connection for me here with this 72-ness. Right. Anyway, first up, after Osiris, here symbolized as the sun, had become king of Egypt and had given to his people the full advantage of his intellectual light. See, again, we have that third aspect coming in, very Hermian. He was a very much a third-rate avatar. The high Midas was the height of that Egyptian belief. He continued his path through the heavens, visiting the peoples of other nations and converting all with whom he came in contact. You wonder, is he talking about the sun, or is he talking about a king, right? So did Osiris literally become king of Egypt? Even though it is said that in pre-dynastic times, gods walked among men, it seems to me more likely that Osiris overshadowed and worked through not just one pharaoh, but all the pharaohs of those in those ancient times, right? Which, since the early pharaohs were initiates, would be pretty much just as effective as Osiris actually incarnating, which, if he's a sixth kingdom being, which is certainly likely, he would have only overshadowed. I think the same thing could be said for visiting and converting the peoples of nearby nations. It was those who worked under the Pharaoh that spread the, quote, intellectual light, the third aspect of the sun, which Osiris represented, right?
Francis?
Yeah.
Magda says Christ between Lucifer and Ahriman on the Golgotha as iconized.
Is she in the chat here? I'm going to read it myself. Christ between Lucifer and
Who
Ahriman.
depicts himself between self. R. Steiner is
Rudolf Steiner.
iconized by, right, by himself under the Rainbow Bridge.
Okay, let me see if I can get a sense of what you're saying here. Christ between Lucifer and Ahriman on Golgotha, which is Mount Golgotha, where he was crucified, as iconized by Rudolf Steiner. Okay, I haven't seen this illustration. I'm guessing that's what you're referring to, or a something that he wrote about this idea that Christ is between Lucifer and Ahriman. Who depicts himself, that meaning Rudolf Steiner, between Master Christian Rosenkreuz, the Mahachohan of this epoch, and the Christ himself, Rudolf Steiner, is iconized by himself under the Rainbow Bridge. I'm out of my depth with this. I'm sorry, Magda. I'm not a Steiner expert, or certainly don't recognize this Steiner iconography. Sorry.
She says Rudolf Steiner wrote, depicted, and sculpted.
Right.
So
this particular, is this an illustration where Christ is depicted between Lucifer and Ahriman on the
Yes.
Mount Golgotha?
Yes. He himself was painter and sculptor, plus is iconized by Nicholas Roerich in Tibet. All this depiction of the Golgotha's image of today in the meditation that we did S7 with Tuja Robbins. We talked about it. On the images were beautiful if you can retrieve them, of the cross, the Christ, the Son above.
I would very much like it. That would be really interesting. So
Yes,
are you saying that he also depicts himself,
Yes,
that is talking about
exactly.
Rudolf Steiner, as between Rosenkreuz and the Christ?
After he died, which was a few days ago, the reconnaissance, after he died, with Ita Wegman, an initiated of anthroposophy in his inner circle, his famous last heredity to the disciples was this iconic image of himself, Rudolf Steiner, this Austrian person and individual, and on the left, Christian Rosenkreuz, you know, the chemical nuptials of Christian Rosenkreuz. And on the right hand side, the Christ himself, as he's sculpted in the Dornach statue in the Dornach's museum now, that was burned in I don't remember what year. And Rudolf Steiner himself, his etherical body left him, so to say, at the age of, very young age, 60 something. And so this iconic image, this last image that he wanted to transmit to us, was on the left, Christian Rosenkreuz, the arch underneath Rudolf stays, and on the right, Christ. I will send you somehow this depiction, which is on many Italian anthroposophical blogs. Many, who can recognize it. And I was wondering with you, which you're most specialized, so to say, in masters, and I was wondering what the connection could be between Christian Rosenkreuz, the unicum Christian Rosenkreuz, you know, from I think 1600s on, and Master R.
Right.
Okay.
Well, certainly, you mean Rukowski, Master R, right?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, certainly they're both very involved in the seventh ray alchemy.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so that would, I'd say that's a definite connection there. I would love to see this. I'm sorry, I can't give you much insight.
I will send it. I will send it somehow in the next chat. I'll prepare. I'm using the cell phone. Unfortunately, I don't have a functioning computer with Zoom on, so I cannot switch right now.
Well,
But
BL, maybe you could put in the chat to my email address, and then you could.
Yes,
you could
but
send me.
this connection, I feel, is very important to go under our attention. Okay, it was just a few days ago, the anniversary of his death. It's not a sentimental thing that I'm talking about. It's more an intuitive feeling, which is very strong, and it gets strong by the day or the minute, which compels me to underpose to your attention this connection, since anthroposophy and theosophy comes from the same gem and stem from the same source, like everything, but more connected. So you can help me with this issue on a more technical side, since you are more specialized on masters and all the technical things that I do not master at all.
Right. Well, I'll take a look and get back to you. You know, and
Thank you.
Maybe do a little research. You bet. And thanks for participating and putting your thoughts in the chat. That's really interesting stuff. And then I see that there's another chat here. All these studies on ISIS.
From.
You want to read it? Go ahead.
All these studies on Isis and the goddesses makes me reflect on how much esoteric astrology needs to develop, including these myths also. You know, as an esoteric astrologer like you, Mary, I agree with you. And there are a number of esoteric astrologers who are working with that. And of course, the key thing that DK gives us in the AAB books is the labor. Well, actually, Alice gave us that. The labors of Hercules, which are, but it's true with all of the myths, and DK brings that out in a number of different ways.
Yeah, he gives us 3 constellations associated with each astrological sign, and that they represent different stages in becoming for the person who is you know, has their sun or rising sign in that sign. And it's really a fascinating study. So yeah, thank you for that. And we are out of time, folks. We're going to stop right here. And unfortunately, the first Sunday in April occurs during the Seven Ray Institute conference. And so we're going to have to cancel. I was hoping to be able to do it on the 30th of April, but my plate is too full. I have too many presentations to prepare. So I'm not going to be able to host that webinar. So we'll pick up again with the secret teachings on the first Sunday of June, I guess it will be.
June, right. The 4th of June.
The 4th of June.
It's at 7 p.m.
And I believe the other webinars are intact, except for there will be no TCF, Treatise on Cosmic Fire. Those of you who are participating in that, certainly on the, I don't know what the second Friday of May holds. Do you know what date that is? I can always pull it up here.
The second Friday of May is the 12th of May, and that's still during the conference. But
Yes.
hold on a minute. Okay. So the next Secret Doctrine is going to be on the 16th of April. So that's good for the third Sunday. And then I think we have a TCF scheduled for
Both are scheduled. 14th and the 28th are intact. I believe those are the 2 Fridays involved, right? The second and fourth Fridays on TCF. But
Yeah.
basically all we're saying is that any webinars that would occur during the conference won't be happening, but that which occurs immediately after the conference, I think it ends on Sunday, May the 14th. Is that right? If that's the case.
Yes. Yes.
So all webinars after that, including the second, including the Secret Doctrine and including the second Treatise on Cosmic Fire webinars, will occur in May. So this month we're actually right on schedule. All, the Treatise Cosmic Fire and the Secret Doctrine webinars will occur as scheduled this month. So, okay, you all, we'll see you next time. Until then, thanks very much for attending.
Goodbye, everybody.